Giglioronicon 60 30-gigawatt beam weapons. Beside it, the Saphirna, 20,000 onboard missiles set for variable yield detonation. Besides them stretches the Obelisk, Adventure, and a dozen other flagships. Across from them, the Nemesis parallels. Darogen, combat effect range 3 light minutes. Diaphrechia, the hit-and-run menace with 3,000 kilometers of delta V. Behind both, they have both brought an elite group of 1,000 ships apiece. But something is off. The fleets don't move. In fact, something is very off. The fleets are barely apart, completely under the minimum range. Their fine-tuned sensors, set to pick out a speck of a ship launch signature from light years away, would be blind this close. What's more, their reactors are cold. Their weapon safety's all on, and most of their crews, save for a skeleton bunch, are not even aboard. For the first time since the invasion campaign began 16 years ago, all of these ships are here, dead silent, dead steady, in one single place. The reason why enters now. A small cargo ship, a freight lifter. It sputters past them in the noiseless void. For a long life it hauled ore, produce, spare parts. But today it hauls the weapon that will end this war. Along this avenue of titans, this tiny ship enters past, into the colony's dock. Inside is the Hall of Heroes. A magnificent, beautiful hall. Some other colonies have pathetic halls. Plastic trophies or a few photographs in a low G-grown wooden case. Dusty, perhaps with a few dead flies to eternally dry up and worship the paraphernalia inside. But not this one. This one was made by House Cobalt, and it's still owned under the mistress' massive fortune, though she will likely never lay eyes on it, as it's just another jewel in her crown of a countless number of worlds. This colony, built in the outskirts of this rocky system of Zeta Pisceum, its riches the source of its fight, has seen many occasions as today. The remnants of these line the halls. Broken pieces and spent casings from fights that truly shaped this system, and its neighbors when they were used to decide such things. And now up from the lift comes the contents of the small freight lifter. The entrant. In just a few short hours the pieces will be assembled and will be ready to go. Its service pit lying opposite to its competitor. As well, they begin the most important part, awakening its pilot. But let's leave such tedium to the technicians and skip just a bit forward in time. Above the hall is the starting point, the Stadium of Heroes, the site of their battle's beginning. A massive special place, reserved for only the highest and most elite of such occasions. Built from real chalk limestone, itself produced by actual artificial calcite organisms, forcibly grown and killed and condensed into place. It sits halfway down the colony's length, so big its sweeping arms have to curve their seating so as not to have its highest spectators be thrown downward by the differentiated gravity of the venue's heights. And its center, the podium waits. Nearby, the observation box. Generals, admirals, leaders, prominent artists, and so on. Mayors of the colony's cities. The governor of this colony in particular, and above them, the colony minister from the Central Pisceum government. They all sit patiently through the final moments before beginning. They had said long, boring speeches about honor and duty, and the war and its worth, and respect in battle, and democracy, and so on, blah blah blah. But I've skipped most of those boring details about the Sinaitic Empire's exploits and the triumph of the Triumvirate, founding of the Kenchistern, etc., etc., most of which is now ancient history and you should know already. With a low tolling bell, the time is now. From the middle of the stadium, they rise up, those who will decide history with their fight. For the invasion forces, the DRV Transet, invariably agile, built for the gradient gravity of colonies such as this. Bold, swift machine. Its pilot, Persicon Richthofen, a classic and steady choice. A construct based on the supposedly most accurate reconstruction of the now mythical ace of primordial Terre. This one's mind has been sharpened by implanted memories of a failed American-German war in the early 20th century over Samoa. ending in a resounding failed invasion of the continental United States. This false history and his memory of it gives him a massive inferiority complex, and makes him more invested in winning each battle. Opposite to him rises the Kyoryu Falgore, an adapted model more used for planetary arenas, but it has been suitably adjusted. The pilot is, or perhaps was, a fairly normal citizen, but a lifetime of debt and a very compatible reflex sheet led her to sell her basic archetype and some excess brain material, and as such this new version of her is now a custom job, retooled for the competition. For our purposes, she only bears the name Lilac. She will be representing the defendants of the war in this deciding fight. Of course, as per the formula, neither plane has any design or engineering past that of 1919 Old Earth Jesus life date. The fuel mix cannot use any foreign extreme substances. No secret X-30 pistons or cheap 3D printed crumple zones. Wood, canvas, metal plate of lightest relative make, once again for 1919. And of course, no lasers, no micro-missile spam, no suicide nukes, though dazzling to see in person. All aspects of the vehicle's design expressing a strict compliance with the rules. Likewise, their pilots, well, potentially artificial in origin, are entirely human. No implants, 6-chamber G-lock-proof hearts, no extra posterior musculature, and definitely no extra leg pumps for blood, and absolutely no secret third internal cochlea. They start their engines. As they roar to life, they are positioned on the twin opposing runways. Now, they don't really need these runways. The rotation of the colony will quickly send them airborne anyways, but it gets the audience fired up. With a thunderous shunt, the planes move from a rolling start to well over flight speed and leap from the ground. It should be noted in this break, as the duelists take to their flight positions, that for any normal person, this moment, even for long-term colony residents, can be absolutely nauseating. For there is no gravity in a spin colony. No real gravity, really. Merely the ground under your feet moving sideways so fast you are pushed down into it. Your inner ear, at that point, given a bit of time, can nicely compensate for the force and pretend it's still on a nice planet. Assuming you are not modified and still have a thing called ears. But up in the air, that imaginary force is gone. Your inner ear no longer even has that. Now, that is not really to say it's a zero-G fight, of course it isn't. The spinning ground of the colony's titanic drum, now hurling past underneath, mechanically spins and creates eddies and currents in that place. So, all boring technical talk aside, the combined experience is that of not just flying, not just keeping sharp and trying to keep a bead on the enemy duelist, but as well doing so under what has been described as flying around inside a tumble dryer or blender, while your ears and brain are also telling you that you might be on a very spinny slope of a ski hill. Ah, and they're in position now. The Grand Cannon is fired and it starts. Lilac goes high in the Fulgore, looping around the great artificial sun spire of the colony. The starting zone of the duel is strict and determined with each match, but it is finite, and so she scans. In the meantime, the DRV, piloted by Richthofen, is hugging the underside of a cloud bank in the opposite starting zone. Both pilots are trying to limit their field of view, giving the other as limited an ability to find them without them finding the other first. So far, no luck. There is, however, a time limit, and a draw simply means another duel, along with a sizable loss in betted fortunes. Lilac has had enough, and runs from her starting zone down the sun spire. As there is no universal gravity, she lines bottom down to its bright light and scans outward. From a distance, Richthofen notes a spot along the spire, but sees it still circling downward. He has found his target, however Lilac has not seen him. He darts under the clouds one last time and hugs the ground. He's using an old trick from an implanted Neo-Bulka memory. Hugging the outer wall of the colony, he tries to roughly match his speed over a cluttered area of city, using its visually dense light and shadow. Sadly, this colony is not quite wide enough for an easy one-to-one, but he manages, looking for the Fulgore all the while. It's a fan favorite because from the ground the plane appears to simply be hovering in mid-air, simply ever so slightly moving backwards or sideways. Of course, adults know that that's merely the plane in the colony's wall moving. The air, providing its lift, is actually going fast enough to do so. He catches a glimpse and darts off. Meanwhile, Lilac does not know this, and has now begun flying cautiously, aware she is certainly inside the enemy's likely area of presence. She double-checks the guns. Both are cocked, both are ready. She has reached the hub at one end of the colony, and is now sweeping downward carefully. From a cloud bank, the DRV erupts half a mile away. Lilac's mind rapidly shifts into defensive mode, and she begins pulling hard. The planes move from a double circle to a single circle fight. Around one another, they rotate. Lilac dives the plane into the vortex of the colony's clouds, but this is a dangerous gamble. The spinning walls of the colony are a grinder of death, moving swiftly in their centripetal dance. Here the awareness of the pilot means life or death. Lilac must use nothing but her perceived imagining of her plane's relative position to the sunspire and the colony wall to get where she needs to. She is trying to make it up and through, up to the hub and out, hopefully having lost the DRV and resetting the fight. She fails. From the cloud behind her, the DRV just overshoots her, and a spray of shells plays out through her wings. In that moment, she feels herself, her artificial life of these battles, charging past in rapid succession, beating the opponents to settle minor trade disputes, prospecting claims and settle debts as she started out, moving up to ending the interprovincial reactor power disagreement by gunning down the Crimson Hare, her battle with the Chainbreaker, and the fight over Ataraxian's star. In that moment, only a second has passed. Her plane is still flying. There are no hits to the engine, but her anti-flaps are out, and her upper wings and lift surfaces are shot. Flying inside the colony is not just about lift. There is no real gravity to passively balance against, merely the spin, in the 6 directions that all pilots have felt since Old Terre. The flaps keep the planes positively lifted up, the anti-flaps open to keep it down. It's heading up now, up towards the towers of the colony walls, spinning by like teeth on a giant saw blade. But that's okay, for an anti-flap is merely a flap upside down. She rolls her plane, and now its grossly unbalanced pitch begins. With the negative of her upper wing lifting surfaces gone, the positive of its lowers rapidly turns the plane. Away from the colony wall, and at 2/3 the rate of the turn she could have done had her plane's wings been intact. She undercuts the DRV's turning circle. Her sights hover over that spot just in front of it, the one she's looking for, and she squeezes the brass trigger. A little while later, only about 15 minutes total, with the fight having lasted barely 6, Lilac sits alive with a broken leg by the battered Kyuryu at the end of its freshly plowed earth field. Far away, the remains of the DRV smoke and burn. It was a victory. Zeta Pisceum will see the withdrawal of all invasion forces from interspace and the system within 6 months. After some 16 years, there will be peace. However, as it was not a perfect S-rank victory, and the plane was damaged, as was the pilot, Zeta Pisceum does lose some minor colonial claims outside of this system, about 1,500 tons of fissiles, a small amount of reparations, all paid to the losing invaders. Her shrine in the Hall of Heroes will be small, maximum size. Instead, Lilac rewards herself with the strike of a new match and a cigarette from her breast pocket.